Hi guys, it's Carl from Monkey Mods. So as you can see, this is a FB3 gearbox. So in the recent weeks, I've been playing a lot with the FB3 gearbox. This is their latest gearbox. It's the top lower splittable, that's the word, a split capable gearbox. It's pretty cool, very handy, and it's very nice when you have to work on certain part of the gearbox only, and then you don't have to mess with the other part of the gearbox. So for example, if I want to do maintenance on the upper half of the gearbox, I don't need to mess with the lower part of it, where I don't need to reshims or retune the gears when I have to mess with it. So I can just take this part off and work on this and pop it back on and done. There's no other extra works needed, and same goes to the lower part. Alright, so anyhow, if you have already played with one of these gearbox, you'll probably notice a couple of problems. The biggest problem, the one that actually sort of breaks the gearbox or make it doesn't really work that well, is actually the taper plate. I'll be discussing about it in a bit, and also the seal problem. The seal on this stock nylon, this nozzle is quite bad. The seal is just not there. It's just quite bad. So I also will be discussing on it in a bit. Now let me just talk about the taper plate itself. So what happens is when you have the gearbox assembled, like so, it's assembled and it's held together with the pins, the big pins on the receiver, so it's pretty secure. Right, so what I have here is just, this is the stock sector gear. I didn't change it, and everything else is actually just stock. I didn't change anything yet. So this is the stock taper plate. It's made of polycarbonate in the very sleek blue color. I kind of like it, but this is actually the main problem. If you have for FB3, you already install it and you didn't do anything right out of the box, you probably notice poor performance, low FPS, inconsistent FPS, and the feeding is not smooth. So the main reason is actually quite simple. It's really just because of this taper plate. I'm not sure why, but it probably didn't do the QC, the QC before they ship this out or testing. So, or they actually test it with different type of a setup that works for them, but after it went into the mass production stage, they sort of ignore it or something. But so this is what the problem is. As we all know, the taper plate, maybe you don't know, but okay, the taper plate is one of the most important parts or component in the entire gearbox. So what it does is, its job is to pull the nozzle backwards so that it allows the gel to feed, to go up to the whatever it's called, chamber, whatever. Oops. So that's one of its job, and then second, it pushes the gel into the inner barrel. So now it's primed to be fired as the sector gear pull the piston behind backwards, and once it's it cleared the funnel teeth, and then the piston would shoot out the gel. So what happened now is, if you pay attention to this part of it, the fin of the taper plate, this is where the timing and stuff that's happening here. So what happens is when the sector gear begins its cycle, this little knob here is what pushes the fin here. So as it begins, now it starts pushing. When you pull the trigger, this is going to happen, and the first teeth of the sector gear will start pulling the piston. Right? So it pulls. So it does two things at the same time, like pulling the piston and also pulling the taper plate back. So what happens now is, as you can see, it's begin pulling, and you see a little bit of curves. I don't know what's it called, curve, whatever. The shape of the fin. So this controls the timing. What happens now is, now it pulls the fins back, and to here. Alright, so this is the maximum travel distance of the taper plate. This is as far as the taper plate can travel. So here, now at this point you can tell from the camera, oops, how about that? At this point, this is the maximum travel distance, where this is as far as the taper plate will be pulled by the sector gear here. So you can tell there's a little gap here. Sorry, camera can catch it. The gap here. Let me just right here. Right, so this is the gap. See here, the gap here. So it's supposed to travel fully, like so, but instead, because of this fin, it just allows the taper plate to travel as far as here. So leaving a bit of a gap here, meaning the nozzle is not fully retracted, like this, to allow the gel to go out. So this is probably a couple of mm, probably 1 or 2 mm, but it makes a lot of difference. You know, this 1-2 mm is going to cause a lot of problem when your gel is trying to fit into the T-piece here. So that's one problem, and this is actually the major problem of this gearbox out of box. So much so that they actually release a new taper plate and address this issue. This is the new taper plate. I'll be showing it to you guys in a bit. So that's the major issue with this gearbox when you have it out of box, and it won't fit well, and the FPS is probably not consistent as well. So what happened is, now without opening, without the nozzle fully retract, the gel may not be able to fit in, especially if your gel size is above 7.3, 7.4 mm. It probably won't fit really well. So that's one problem. Now, I've heard a lot of people, or even the manufacturer himself, they actually recommend me to use the delayer. This little piece here is a delayer chip. Now, this won't actually solve the problem, because as its name implies, what it does is merely delay the time of the taper plate pulling the nozzle backwards. It delays the time of it closing, and actually it increases it makes the nozzle goes backwards a bit faster, but it also makes the nozzle return a bit slower. So that gives enough time for the gel to load if you have a really high rate of fire setup. But in this case, this won't help at all. Let me just show you why. Let's take this out. Put this delayer chip in. Goes this way. Right, so it's really easy to install this piece, but you have to know why and whether it's actually necessary. If not, it may actually causes more problem than it should solve. Right, so with the delayer chip in, now you can tell on this piece here. So as it turns, now instead of here, it's instead of these little knobs here pushing it, now this delayer chip will start pulling the taper plate much earlier. So now it starts pulling. It's actually not the gauge, right? So it starts pulling, and it stops here. This is the maximum distance can be traveled by the taper plate, and as you can tell, it's having the same issue. Here, the gap here, the little gap here. So this gap, I can still retract the nozzle further. So this is why adding a delayer chip won't really solve this problem if you have this taper plate on. I've tried on several gears because I thought maybe different gears has different setup on this little knob here that interferes with the temper plate. So I tested two sets of gears here. This is the SHS 18:1 and SHS 12:1. Yeah, they give the exact same result. So this gear set doesn't actually work with this temper plate as well. So no amount of delayer chips or whatever you can do to solve this, and neither you can actually mod this temper plate for it to work, because you can reduce material to delay it, but there's no way you can actually make it retract further by removing material here. So your only option is actually to replace this, which is a really simple job, especially on an FB3. Just need to take the upper apart and just put in the temper plate. So the solution is just take this off, dump it, and just take off the delayer chip as well. It's not very necessary. Right, so this temper plate, the fighting bros call it the FB3.0S. So if you purchase a new FB3 gearbox now, they should come with this, because this is their latest gearbox designated name is called FB3.0S. So what they actually did was they just give you this temper plate for you to replace it. So now if you have, this is the temper plate, this is the layer chip they give one as well. So this temper plate is made of nylon, not polycarbonate. I think it's not that bad as well. Now, if you have a LDT gearbox, if you have the LDT gearbox temper plate, it will also solve the problem. They actually looks quite similar with this FB3.0S. So if I install this, so now I have the FB3.0S temper plate installed. So let's try again. So this is where the gear start pulling the fin of the temper plate. Now it starts turning. Now it travels, and this is where it stops. So this improves the amount of a distance the nozzle can be retracted. Now of course I can still notice some gaps here, but this 1mm probably is the reason why it actually makes the gearbox works actually close to perfect. Because when I have this installed, the gearbox just works like a charm, it's like a dream. It shoots well, it fits well, there's no problem feeding at all. Almost every single trigger pull will shoot out all the gels. So this is why if you have a gearbox and it's giving you problem, this is probably the first place you should look at. So the manufacturing quality of this temper plate is not that great actually, because I can already tell there are some burrs. Not sure the camera can catch, but there are some residue from the manufacturing, so probably a good idea to use a sandpaper to clean it up before you use. So anyway, this temper plate is the answer to how to solve this problem and why. Because this doesn't make sense why they make this temper plate and then it won't work well out of the box. So as soon as you get your FB3, I recommend you to immediately change it out to FB3.0S temper plate, or you can purchase the FB3 gearbox Titan Enhanced Editions, where we already have the temper plate installed for you, and also the the cylinder head and the nozzle replaced with our latest products, the Titan manufactured CNC aluminum cylinder head and a nozzle. So say if you have a FB3 and you don't want to spend too much, I recommend to at least purchase one of this. This is a FB brand aluminum nozzle. Now this nozzle will improve the gearbox a lot, especially the consistency and the FPS, because this has an O-ring within. So the seal on this thing is really good, and it's you can actually just drop in an upgrade like so, and the seal will be way better. So if you have the stock one, not to say that the seal is completely crap, but it fits quite loose here, so certain amount of air will escape from behind here. So the seal is actually it's quite bad actually. It's not there. So I just want to share with you guys, as soon as you have your FB3 and it's giving you trouble, so these two parts is probably the first thing that you should look at. The temper plate is the main thing, and if you want to enhance the consistency and the FPS of the FB3, you should get this, the aluminum nozzle head, because this FB polycarbonate piston actually is no problem with it. It works quite well and it's very lightweight. This comes with the nylon piston head here. Now there's no padding whatsoever, but because it's nylon, it's not so bad, and they actually have padding on the cylinder head, so not too much of a concern. You don't need to change this if you want to save some budget or something. This works well. Even the stock cylinder head is made of polycarbonate. The seal is not that bad. I mean, it's serviceable, so probably don't need to change it out if you don't need to. The seal is actually alright. Wow, actually no, it's actually leaking. So, alright, that's better. I just make sure that the cylinder head is completely aligned with the cylinder, because any slight movement it actually causes a leak. Yeah. Once it's aligned, the seal is alright. Right, so probably something to consider about, but sooner or later I'm guessing most of you guys are going to change this out with a better one. Out of box, it's not too bad. To be fair, it's not cheap, but it does come with a metal gear, so probably will last you a while before you need to change anything. And that's it for today's episode of video. So conclusions, yeah, the cylinder head, the cylinder itself is quite nice as well. I kind of like this. So the conclusions, if you have an FB3 and it's giving you trouble, definitely check the temper plate. Make sure it's actually the latest FB3.0, or if you don't have one, you can also source for the LDT gearbox temper plate. That will also solve this problem. And secondly, the aluminum nozzle here. I recommend this. I don't think Monkey Mod will sell this, because we'll be having our own Titan brands cylinder head and nozzle. But well, who knows? If our customer asks, we may actually stock this. So this has been the short video on why the FB3 sucks so hard out of box. I hope this video will help you out if you're having trouble with your FB3 gearbox. And if you have any other problems with this gearbox, you can also leave your question in the comments. I'll look at it, answer your questions when I'm able to, and even make a video about it if I think it's significant enough. Because personally, I changed these two parts, this and then the temper plate, and it works like charm for me. It's doing about 270 FPS with the stock spring. Stock spring is a 1.2 spring, by the way. So 1.2 outputting 270 to 280 FPS is really good. So no real complaint with it after I change out these two parts. So thank you for watching. I hope you find this video to be informative. I'll see you guys next time. Thanks, subscribe and like the video. Peace. Thank you.